teach me how to use it?
Well, I have to warn you, Nora, it's a little bit negative.
Hi everyone, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Flash episode 19 video. They did a whole bunch of stuff from the comics. They finally did the negative Speed Force, so I'll explain all the Easter eggs. We'll do top 10 WTF. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the Easter egg videos. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming up between Avengers Endgame, Game of Thrones is on right now. It's crazy. We're doing an IMAX ticket giveaway right now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a Flash-related comment on the video. Careful for spoilers from the episode. If you haven't seen it yet, top 10 WTF. Here we go. Number 10, Barry versus Iris. So they basically pick up in the moments after last week's episode with Barry is trying to explain why he took Nora back to the future. She's been lying to us this whole time. She's been working with the Reverse Flash, and Barry isn't having any of it. Iris is mostly pissed because he didn't talk to her before he took Nora back, and she really wants Nora to stay in their timeline, despite the fact that she's breaking the time-space continuum by existing in their timeline. Remember, they usually go by Back to the Future rules within the world of the Flash and DC Comics, at least within the world of the TV show. So there were a lot of Back to the Future references during the episode, but then she throws Flashpoint in his face like, you make decisions like this all the time without asking other people. The main idea of this argument is that they're both meant to be about 50% right, so it doesn't really matter what they're saying because they're both kind of taking crazy pills. They didn't really take the argument to its logical conclusion because if Iris wants Nora to be with her, like the present version of Iris, so badly, all she has to do is get to making that baby with Barry and she'll see Nora in about 9 months. Really, if they just chilled out for about a year or two, Barry would probably go back to the future to visit her and things would cool off a little bit. But because we're building into Crisis on Infinite Earths, everything kind of has to blow up in their faces in the next couple of episodes. Number 9, Reverse Flash gives Nora the idea to use the negative Speed Force. I'm gonna warn you, it's a little negative. So I was so happy that they finally did this from the comics, and they're actually pulling from Jeff Johns' 2009 Flash Rebirth comic when Professor Zoom created the negative Speed Force. So Reverse Flash gives a bit of a tutorial on where it came from, why he created it. I was meant to be the reverse of everything that your father is, and that included creating my own negative Speed Force that was the opposite of his. So when dropping that bomb, they also recontextualized a lot of stuff that was happening during Season 1. But just to be clear, they just did a bunch of different forces in the Force Quest storyline during the Rebirth Flash comics. So there's the negative Speed Force, the Still Force, the Sage Force, the Strength Force, the positive Speed Force. Any Flash can use any one of those forces. I mean, any other meta could use the other forces too, but we're really just dealing with Flashes in the Speed Force. So negative Speed Force, positive Speed Force, doesn't matter whether you're a good speedster or an evil speedster like Reverse Flash, you can use either one, but they're playing it a bit Star Wars with the light side and the dark side of the Force. The negative Speed Force is driven by very powerful emotions, particularly negative emotions. So I really love the tutorial that he gives her later in the episode and the way that he narrates and how that speech is very different from the speech that he gives to Nora when she's trying to teach her how to phase. Like, there was a really positive speech. You're one with the Speed Force. You're one with everything. But the negative Speed Force is all about being sad, angry, and all alone in the world, being just so welled up with emotion that you want to explode and kill everything. So that creepy smile on his face when he tells her about it, I'm going to warn you, it's going to be a little negative. Just gives you an idea that he's excited about what's going to happen, but the way the show's playing it makes it sound like he's definitely manipulating her because now a couple different characters are like, oh yeah, he is definitely messing with Nora's head. But because of some of the twists at the end of the episode, it's hard to tell how much he's genuinely trying to help Nora and how much he's just doing this to create a way for himself to escape. I'll talk about that in a second because I think that has a lot to do with what's going on with Barry in Reverse Flash between the two of them since the last time that they met with each other in the future. But number 8, future Grace Cicada steals young Grace from her hospital bed. Barry says, could things get any worse? Which is obviously the worst possible thing that you could say in a genre show like this. That's the minute that things get really, really bad. Even though it seems like it had something to do with the atomizer at the end of the episode, I think the other practical reason for taking her from the hospital is to prevent Team Flash from just using the nuclear option of waking young Grace up out of her coma, causing older Grace Cicada to just vanish into the time stream. That would be a really easy way to defeat her. But number 7, the something worse that Barry prophesied was Icicle coming back, ransacking Caitlyn's mother's lab for the cryoatomizer so that he could create another Killer Frost in Caitlyn's mother and they could be like a cold family together. There were a lot of funny moments between her and her mother, but you kind of saw their arc during the episode. Caitlyn's mother used to be kind of an antagonist to her, but now they want her to be her friend, and they're trying to build that bond between them so that when her mother eventually turns into another Killer Frost persona or another Icicle persona, she can be a villain for the show because they killed off Icicle during the episode. There was a very big pizza Easter egg that you guys probably spotted. If you read text upside down, that's Milgram and McFarlane Pizza. Obviously, Todd McFarlane from Spawn fame. He also worked on a lot of Marvel, a lot of DC titles. He was one of the people that popularized Venom. Al Milgram was one of the people that helped create the Firestorm character with Jerry Conway. So number 6, Iris and Ralph go back to the future with a lot of Back to the Future references. This is a little bit like Iris in Reverse Flash during the recent Rebirth comics last year. So either last year or the year before, they just brought back Eobard Thawne Reverse Flash in the new Flash Rebirth title. And as part of that storyline, he takes Iris to the future to show her what happens to her and Barry's children. This is very post-apocalyptic future Central City. Everything looks like it's gone to shit. And their children, the Tornado Twins, look like they're full-blown evil. So Reverse Flash is just sort of taunting Barry and Iris with this. And it was also this version of Iris, because they rebooted everything, learning that Barry was the Flash for the first time. So they weren't even a couple at this point in the comics. There's an 88 miles an hour reference that Ralph gives off. They're using Savitar's Speed Force gun to open a wormhole, and obviously using Eobard Thawne's time capsule to travel back to the future. But number 5, Reverse Flash gives Nora the most WTF negative Speed Force tutorial. Like I said, the speech that he gave Barry and Nora separately when he was teaching them to phase was really positive. It gets you really jazzed up. But the inspirational speech that he gives to Nora when she's trying to access the negative Speed Force was just so messed up. As cool as that is, side note, that also gives you an idea for the way Reverse Flash feels about himself relative to Barry Allen. He feels all alone in the world. He's really upset about it. So in the comics, Reverse Flash comes back during the 2009 Flash Rebirth. He'd been trapped in the Speed Force, but what he does is to create the negative Speed Force is that he sort of reverse engineers the accident that gave Barry powers. They got a little fast and loose with the logic of it all during that era in the comics, but in present day, they just say that the negative Speed Force is one of many different forces that people can access. So if you're wondering if there's negative Speed Force wormhole aliens, like there are living beings in the Speed Force that exert their will when Barry does things that they don't want, or when they want Barry to do something specific. Just because Reverse Flash created the negative Speed Force doesn't necessarily mean that there are now negative Speed Force wormhole aliens. It doesn't quite work that way, so they're playing a little fast and loose, so I wouldn't try to poke too many holes in that. But number 4, Ralph and Iris visit Reverse Flash in prison. He Who Shall Not Be Named, Voldemort, Harry Potter reference. There's an advertisement for Elongated Man's Jingled Soda on the back of the Guards magazine. He makes a Silence of the Lambs reference when he says Hannibal Speedster, talking about Hannibal Lecter, aka Reverse Flash. As messed up as it is that Iris has come to talk to him, she at least realizes that he's manipulating Nora, even though probably the most shocking conclusion that she comes to is that he genuinely cares about her, and it's really hard to tell how much of that is actual genuine emotion that he feels for Nora, and how much of it is him just manipulating her to get himself out of this situation where he's gonna die as the countdown clock reaches 0. But number 3, Killer Frost versus Icicle. So they have a battle that's a lot like the Killer Frost Flash battle from Season 3, with her using her ice bridge to just glide through the sky. They do a much bigger version of that because Icicle has all the same powers that she has. I'm not super invested in her relationship with her father, even though, like, they had a couple nice moments the way they wrote it. Maybe if they'd been building that for the last couple of seasons, it'd be a little bit different. But the Thomas persona prevents Icicle from killing Killer Frost. So they get a nice moment, but then obviously Grace winds up killing him later in the episode. So like I said, they're sort of replacing him with a potential future version of Icicle in her mother, or future Killer Frost, whatever you want to call her mother's evil persona. But number 2, the big surprise at the end of the episode is that the special vial of her mother's DNA turns white, meaning that she will eventually at some point, either in a future episode or a future season, manifest an evil persona, whatever they want to call that. There were a lot of people that thought that maybe Danielle Pennebaker was leaving The Flash at the end of the season. Everybody's wondering if Cisco is going to leave the show, if maybe Tom Cavanaugh is going to leave the show, so Reverse Flash and all the Harrison Wells will leave the show. But if they're setting up Caitlyn's mother to be a really big villain for her, because now that they're all close by the end of the episode, like, hey, maybe we'll hang out sometime, I want you to be in my life, it makes more sense that she turns evil, so she becomes a much more meaningful villain for Caitlyn in a future season. I don't think that they would do that with only a couple episodes left to go, so it season 6 type of twist where we see that evil mother persona. But that would imply that Danielle Panabaker is going to stay on the Flash TV show, so I don't know if she's going to be leaving anytime in the future before season 7 because most of the main cast are signed for 7 seasons on the show. But every once in a while, an actor will be killed off early or they'll ask to be let out of their contract early, which it sounds like maybe is going to happen with Cisco. He wasn't even in this episode, and I don't recall them having a really good reason for why he wasn't around. So the fact that Cisco seems to be absent from so many episodes this season does imply that he is eventually going to leave the show. But number 1 WTF, just as Barry and Iris are making up with each other for their big argument earlier in the episode, Negative Flash Nora comes back to the past poisoned with negative speed force, which is actually some of the fan fiction that I wrote before season 5 started. Before we knew that Nora was going to be an only child and we still thought they were going to do tornado twins, I was like, wouldn't it be cool if their twins were poisoned by negative speed force and Barry had to save them, or they got to be villains for part of the season, because it'd be much more meaningful for Team Flash if the people that they were trying to stop doing all these crazy evil things were their biological children. So they're kind of doing that with Nora the last couple of episodes, but because it's episode 19 this week and there's only 22 episodes in the season, obviously this isn't going to last for that much longer. When Iris said that she thinks that Reverse Flash cares about Nora the same way that Barry does, like a daughter, that actually seems like a pretty big twist the end of the season. Whereas you would normally expect Nora to break Reverse Flash out of prison before he gets executed, now what they might do, because Barry is trying to be more understanding of Nora, understanding of Iris, being more empathetic with villains, that was the whole point of the Cicada storyline. Like, let's try to help him, let's not try to kill him, even though he's been killing a whole lot of people. Big twist this season, maybe Barry helps Reverse Flash escape from prison, giving him a reprieve, like, I'm gonna give you a chance because you've tried to help my daughter so much and it seems like you're turning over a new leaf. But the thing about the future Crisis on Infinite Earths newspaper is that it said that Reverse Flash was leading an army of shadow demons. So either they change that and Reverse Flash helps them during Crisis on Infinite Earths in the next crossover, or he double crosses Barry at the end of the season after Barry helps him escape. So let me know in the comments, clearly Reverse Flash is not going to die at the end of the season. What do you think happens to get him out of that prison? What's happening later this week is that obviously Avengers Endgame is hitting theaters and they're doing the biggest episode of Game of Thrones in the show's history. So as long as you have alerts enabled for my channel, you'll get all those videos, but there's going to be a whole bunch of big stuff happening this weekend. So make sure you stay alive so that you have a chance to see it all. I'll name a new giveaway winner when I